So we're making students that maybe weren't going to be successful, more successful. We were able to complete students by deploying additional resources to them. Maybe it's a tutor, maybe that's remedial education, whatever the case may be. And then they were eventually able to progress through that pathway and complete their degree. But it's really seeing the impact of AI and the human value of it. And I think that's sort of diminished. There's all these doom and gloom articles about how AI is going to destroy humanity, but I do think it has the power to amplify humanity as well.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbankoff's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 199. Education is standing at a crossroads, and AI could be the biggest force shaping its future. In this episode, we explore how AI can move beyond simply digitizing the classroom to creating truly adaptive, personalized learning experiences. From helping students with disabilities overcome barriers to enabling rapid skill acquisition for an evolving job market, the potential impact is enormous. We dive into the idea of shifting from search engines to recommendation engines in education, where AI doesn't just provide information but actively matches students with the most relevant institutions, programs, and skills. We also examine the tension between traditional credentials and competency-based learning and how AI could accelerate the shift. Ultimately, this conversation is about more than just technology. It's about integrating AI in a way that amplifies human values, strengthens essential human skills, and makes education more accessible, efficient, and relevant for the future. Ben Tasker is at the forefront of AI-driven education, shaping the future of skills-based learning as the Associate Dean of AI at one of the nation's leading universities. With a unique blend of experience as a data scientist, AI product leader, and educator, Ben brings deep insight into how artificial intelligence is transforming education, workforce development, and the broader future of learning. During his time at Maine Health, Ben developed an AI system that identified 20% more at-risk cancer patients. Ben's work spans multiple sectors, including healthcare and government, where he's explored how AI can reduce wait times, address service backlogs, and enhance decision-making. His passion lies in applying AI to personalized applications.
All right, Ben, thanks for coming onto the podcast today to talk about AI and education. I think I've talked about this a couple times on the podcast before, but it's been a while, so very much looking forward to diving into it today. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
No problem, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, how did you get started in this? Was it education first and then AI, or AI and then education? What was the path that led you to the work that you do?
It was actually the lack of education. For me, it was the lack of data literacy. I was starting to see AI before. I mean, AI has been around for a while, but before it's really become, the LLMs that folks are working with today. And the oil of any engine. So if you think of AI like the engine, the oil of that engine is data and data literacy. And my first job was actually in a hospital. And my task was to predict the patient volumes for doctors' offices. And that sounds like a small task, but everything was in an Excel sheet. It was scattered everywhere. Sometimes I think they were estimates actually, so I don't know if they were actually volumes. And what was really interesting is that this impacts patient care. So they were going to change and modify doctors' hours based upon the volume that they saw. And that really made me start to think about automation. And I understand automation's different than AI. But then that led me to go get my master's degree in data science and analytics. It really focused on the computer science side of things and then the human skill side of things. So the project management, the leadership, the visual storytelling, the data literacy. And then that trickled back into going back to education. So once I was in education, I really enjoyed it, focusing on those human values and applying these, at the time, machine learning algorithms to students and student success models, and really seeing that at scale. So we're making students that maybe weren't going to be successful more successful. We were able to complete students by deploying additional resources to them. Maybe it's a tutor, maybe that's a different section of a course, maybe that's remedial education, whatever the case may be. And then they were eventually able to progress through that pathway and complete their degree. And then that eventually led me to my role as a dean of AI for one of the world's largest institutions. There's over 200,000 students, all online, asynchronous, or mostly online and asynchronous. But it's really seeing the impact of AI and the human value of it. And I think that's sort of diminished. There's all these doom and gloom articles about how AI is going to destroy humanity, but I do think it has the power to amplify humanity as well.
Very interesting. I maybe want to touch on one of the points that you mentioned there about tutors. So, obviously these LLMs have been out for, well, not even all that long, just a couple of years now. Um, how do you see them already being utilized? Like, are we already seeing, um, you know, very specific tutors for very specific students, right? Like, I have family members that had or that have dyslexia, for instance, and they had a hell of a time going through school when they were younger, but they needed very specific tutors to help, educate in or help them to learn in one specific way. Are we kind of already seeing that for online schools where there's AI support or tutors? Is that already that something that's out there?
I think it's important to understand the current education ecosystem before I grapple with that. So,
Sure, sure.
and I also think it's really important to understand that we're in what I consider the between time. So we're not completely out of the past and we're not completely into the future. And the AI revolution is just beginning. What's very unique about this between times, though, unlike other between times that have happened, is that I think education is going to have to be part of that revolution earlier rather than later. AIs can disseminate information. That's how it learns, right? So these LLMs
Mhm,
go and scrape the web. Maybe they're a little bit more personalized. You train it, and then it gives you personalized information back. It's a recommendation engine. So linking that back to the ecosystem, thinking about education today, maybe someone searches for a program or a micro certificate through the web. Search is much different than an AI recommendation. Maybe then they apply, enroll, so you have to work with the admissions team for that. Then you might go to financial aid, so now that's another handoff. Then you have to work with the program faculty. Maybe there's different types of faculty. There's a program chair, so you have to make sure you meet your requirements. So that's now a third group of people right there. There's the marketing team that maybe you saw an ad from.
mhm,
Now that's a fourth, and I can keep going, but the ecosystem's very siloed. And I think
mhm,
where education is trying to amplify this is on the product side. And it could be a whole separate podcast, but thinking of whatever the students do as a product is a different mindset than maybe completing or making sure that they earn their degree. But so, for example, how are they using prompts to do research? How are we embedding AI in our learning management system? But I think AI, or at least from my perch, the ecosystem point of view
mhm,
is very critical because without it, none of that other stuff matters. So you're gonna do all your investment in one area, and then all the other areas, right? It's there's not gonna be much there. And
mm,
a major consideration as well is thinking about how AI is going to recommend your institution. A recommendation engine, and I know I keep saying that, but I want to make sure I emphasize it. It's not going to be a search engine. It recommends things based upon personalization. So the learning story that you just shared, that's very personalized.
mm,
So imagine me getting a list of schools to apply to based upon whatever characteristics that the LLM thinks I need to focus on. That's a very different system than it is today.
mm. So with this ecosystem, as you're saying, with AI getting involved in each of these, these verticals, are we going to be seeing, I mean, we should be seeing improvements in, for instance, marketing. I have a marketing department in my company. We're clearly utilizing a lot of AI tools in order to, appease our clients and, improve what we can for them. For the educational system, we're going to be seeing kind of different AI tools utilized in each of these different verticals. Is obviously that's going to make things and the individuals in those verticals a little bit more efficient. Are we, and we talked about this a little bit before, are we also going to be seeing a lot of people's jobs being replaced by AI, or do you see this as more of kind of an augmentation technology for the next couple of years?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, horse and buggy approach, right? To automotives. The
Mm,
horse and buggy was here first. We didn't really have roads or anything. Then the car was invented. We had to make that whole infrastructure, and now cars run. We don't use horse and buggy. Same
mhm,
thing with AI. How are we doing that? And I really think it comes down to thinking about from like a skills perspective. So the World Economic Forum has two distinct swim lanes for skills. One is AI skills, and the other is human skills. And I think those are two very key terms: AI skills and human skills. They don't call them technical skills and soft skills or any other variation of those words, even though that's what they mean. But the AI skills, coding, for example, analytical thinking, any of the STEM related domains right now
mhm,
fall
mhm,
into that swim lane. And the reason why they call them AI skills is because AI can do those things, and it's going to be able to do those things probably better than a human. The other skills, human skills, communication, collaboration, learning agility, um, maybe data storytelling, even though that's in the middle, right?
mhm,
Those are now soft skills, human skills, and those are distinctly human. So, how do we learn these things? I mean, I have students come up to me all the time. How can I learn human skills when it's already embedded in the program? They might not see it as relevant as the coding or as the other
mhm,
applications or skills that we teach. It's kind of hidden in there, and if jobs go away, then what do we do with education institutions? Do those do those go away too?
mhm. Yeah.
Um, I think we have to focus on skills-based learning. The skills might change. We might call them different things, but those core skills, um, I mean, it's wonky, right? I broke down the compartments, but eventually you earn a diploma or a certification, and then typically, at least in current economy, you get a job. Maybe it's a couple different jobs, but then you retire.
Mm,
I don't You have to be pretty adaptive, and I'm talking about this from an education institution part, not just from a human perspective. You have to be pretty adaptive to be able to change out skills pretty quickly, and even at light speed, I think it would take a university or some other college months to change out. It's very difficult. It has to go through committees, and it has to be attached
mhm.
to accreditation. It's rigorous.
Yeah, it's not only rigorous and time consuming, it might actually be impossible for them to adapt properly because by the time they've put in place some new system, the next AI model might make most of the work that they've done redundant. Um, so I guess maybe that's a segue to another question. Like, is the model of education that we have nowadays, like universities, colleges, high schools, etc., is that also going to have to go through a I don't know if revolution is the right word, but a profound change? Like you said that you have an online you're part of an online university. Is that where things are going to be headed over the next little while?
I mean, I still think there's place for in-person learning, and, if you focus on trades, for example, like fixing cars or building houses, I would put that in the human skills category,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
especially it's very hard for AI to do those things, or at least hard to do those things right now. But focusing on a skills framework, and there's many that exist, but when we talk about skills, I think it's almost like I'm talking about AI. There's a different definition for all of these things. All these institutions have a different terminology for it. It's hard to transfer credits when they're attached to skills, but they're faster. They're easier to change out once you get that into place. And some of the solutions are actually free. Some of the skills databases are free. So, in order to do skills frameworks, you have to attach to a skills database. You then have to tag your content to what skills that you're teaching. And then you have to be able to articulate that to the students. Now, yes, that's a cumbersome process, but back to the recommendation engine, if you can do that and do it successfully, it's easier for the LLM to understand that than all these other different types of pedagogies because adaptability, communication, those are going to be called those things probably for a while.
Interesting. Um, and then, so if we're also, so maybe this conversation needs to be broken down into kind of uh, the system or the teachers or the institution side of how AI is going to be impacting that, and then also the students, which I think is what most people think about when education is changing, right? It's how are students learning new things, or if they're learning the relevant things. If we can focus on kind of the institutions for a little bit, what so I mean, we're talking about like the maybe the curriculum changing and maybe the structure of these organizations changing a little bit. What else is going to how else is AI going to be impacting the institutional side of education?
Based upon wherever you are as a student. So there's probably going to, so World Economic Forum states around 1 billion people will need to upskill by 2030. That's 1 billion by 2030. Less than 5 years at this point. That's a ton of people entering the market to upskill. And then on top of that, there's about 44 million people that have started a degree or some sort of program and haven't completed it. So they took out student loan debt or potentially and then didn't finish. So how do you get those people back in? I think some of the reasons why people don't complete, and that comes back to building that algorithm to help students complete, is they either have to drive too far to get to a college campus. They didn't understand the return on investment. It took too long, even if they could get there, to do all these different accreditation standards, even though for what they wanted to do, you could probably teach them much more quickly. So maybe it's more of a hybrid approach if you like the in-person learning. Maybe you learn those human skills more in a classroom, and then whatever falls into the AI technical skills, even if it's nursing, for example, there's probably prompt engineering, how to interact with AI to help diagnose patients in the future. That could probably be taught online. AI can teach those things very well. Um, but ultimately, I think the institutions, the onus is on the institution. They have to start thinking about their product. For example, if I'm an English professor, I'm not, but if I were, I would be incorporating prompts into the research. I would make sure that the students are looking to make sure that whatever those prompts got are accurate. So that's the research part of it now at this point. I would then add a human element to it. And then the product delivery, the actual paper. So even though that is a communication, that's a human skill, I just incorporated the technical prompt skills and interacting with the LLMs and that. So changing the product just a little bit, even though it's not major, I think would go a long ways.
Okay, and how about the global impact, right? So if we're I think you're in the sorry, are you in Canada or the States?
I'm in the States, yeah, East
You're in
Coast.
the States. Okay, so I'm in Canada, but we now live in a very global world civilization right now. So how am I forming this question? Like, what kind of impacts will AI bring about? Is it going to enable more people across the globe to compete at a standard level that, you in the States, me in Canada, are going to be competing against? I mean, we're already kind of, or we have been seeing that on the job market. I would think that with AI and its ability to help translate things at a much faster pace, people from around the world would be able to, you know, whether they get educated or provide services, it's going to be even faster than before. So we're not going to be competing against our own little local places. It's going to be at a more global level.
Um, that's it. So I think from like the education side, so we would decrease costs, which
Mhm.
would, in theory, increase accessibility. So now more people can get educated more quickly. Um, the time it takes to get the education, maybe, so let's just pretend a bachelor's degree across the board's 4 years.
Mhm.
You can go through that curriculum more quickly. So maybe now it takes 2 years. Uh, But on the institution side, you're getting more students, even though if they're paying less of a tuition, there's more of them. So you're probably capturing more revenue. So it's better for the institutions, right? To try to adapt these things. Um,
Mm,
so I guess being afraid, even though there are
mhm,
these doom and gloom stories, I don't know if people are thinking about it from that systems approach yet. Right now it's just like, oh, we're just going to shut this down, hope it goes away, or at least that's how I feel it is. I don't know.
mm. Is that what you're hearing quite a bit? Like, obviously, I'm not part of the educational industry, but are you hearing there's just like, well, let's not deal with this, let's cut it out, it's gonna disrupt things too much?
Or they just try to put a solution into one part of the process and not the whole process. And then it kind of becomes, in my mind, the Wild West. So we're going to have this really sophisticated system in one part of the university. And then in the next part, there's no standard, no process. We're all using these different LLMs.
Mm,
You can't track what the student's doing. You can't really make it that personalized. They're kind of introductory skills at that point. So it's the ecosystem's not converging.
mm. So this has come up in a number of other podcasts in different industries, like with the internet or other, larger, more, ubiquitous technologies. Did that happen as well in the educational like, when I don't know, maybe this is too far back, but like when computers were starting to come out, was it only like a computer lab that was set up and computers weren't scaled out to the rest of the institution, and it took, a decade or more before that started to happen? Is this, I guess my question is this new introduction of AI something completely new, or are these institutions going to go about it the same way that they've done in previous revolutions or innovation periods?
I think we're not exactly comparing apples to oranges. So the internet revolution already happened, and we already kind of have that case study, in my opinion. So yeah, you did have to centralize the computers, and it took a couple decades for everybody to get one, and there was an accessibility issue. So it really wasn't. Some might question the fairness of it. Most folks have PCs now, or at least in most societies, right? And if not, you can still potentially download an LLM and use it not connected to the internet. Um, so I think it's a lot different, and I think we're trying to make AI go through the same process, but I don't know if it deserves to go through that process. And most of that is through fear, I think, not
Mm,
because we really want to adopt it. Claude for Education, for example, it came out a few weeks ago. There were three major partners on that announcement, and they're thinking about AI as an ecosystem, not just in their educational content. Um, I think that's a key. There were three though. I don't know. I understand there's cost applied to that,
mm,
but think about always being to update your content, being able to teach skills, the skills tagging that I talked about,
mm.
helping with the enrollment process, getting your website ready to be part of that recommendation engine. If we're not doing that soon, right? I don't know. Some universities might not be around, which might be the doom and gloom, but it will amplify if you start early. It will amplify your university.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think maybe that's a good point to kind of end this discussion on the institutional framework, because that's something that is a very clear trend, no matter in what industry we're talking about. Right? It's either get on the bandwagon or be left behind. Yeah, because of the power of this technology. So one of the things that I've heard, whether from friends or social media or kind of everywhere, when we're talking about this fear aspect of AI and education as it pertains to individual people, is the cheating, right? Uh, I was a pretty good essay writer back in the day. I don't need to write another essay for the rest of my life, right? I can just plug it into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and get a fairly good essay that would have been better than my first drafts back in the day for sure. So, how is the educational industry dealing with that? To me, it sounds like they're still fearful and kind of shutting this down. But I have heard, well, why don't we shift to teach how to prompt? What are your thoughts on this?
I think we need substantive shifts. So I've been talking about product a lot, but kind of circling back to that.
Mhm.
we can teach how to prompt, we can become less fearful. But the way my parents wrote essays, they actually had to go to the library, look up books. They took down notes. They actually used a typewriter. They said, then I use Google. Now it's at my fingertips. I use a word processor, not a typewriter. So education changed then. We're still not doing, handwritten reports. So what's the next iteration of that? It,
Mm.
yes, we can bake in prompts, but if we're not teaching the prompt engineering, if we're not changing the product deliverable, actually showcasing your prompts and how you iterated on them, asking them the risk around that, because I think all this has risk, right?
Mhm.
Um, it becomes that Wild West solution where they're just going to go out to the LLM sheet because no one wants to commit to a policy. I don't know. Is that on the student or is that on the organization?
Hmm. Interesting. And like, how are students acting or reacting to this technology? I would assume that, um, like criminals, they're some of the first ones to start using advanced technology in order to save time for studying or save time for tests and things like that. Is that assumption correct? That students are some of the ones that are picking this up faster than most?
I know we just talked about cheating, but one cool thing that I've been seeing students do is if the AI is baked in the course by looking at the prompts, if the course is linked to a certification exam, so like a Microsoft exam or something like that, they're actually using it to study for the exam, which reduces costs. And then they go and earn that certification. So they're earning while they learn. And I think it's really hard to get students to put in 100 extra hours in a course when it's already 100 hours, right? But
Yeah.
now it's streamlining that process. So there are abilities to enable this sort of thing without disrupting your course. And then all those students are like, hey, you have to go take this person's course because we also can get this certification. And it was actually really easy to obtain. I got the AI helped me. It's 24/7 teaching assistant. So I think that personalization um, element is only going to get better, not worse. And I
Mhm.
think the way at least most education institutions do marketing or programs or whatever the case may be, it's one to many. So the institution to as many people as they can get. But with AI, it's one to one, or it could be one to one if you do it right.
Right. Right. And are you maybe back to one of my first questions? Like, are we seeing um like how quickly is this personalization, educational personalization coming about, right? Like you said, we're not in the past, we're not in the future, we're kind of still in the middle ground here. But like, are there practical examples that you can say about, well, this LLM tool is like personalized teaching for, I don't know, say how to write an essay or something like that. Like I'm assuming that we're seeing that at least come about now.
I think some educational institutions are doing that. I think it dep like, how do you enable it? So you can train the AI on your content, for example, and what's
Hmm.
in the course. So that might require special licenses and stuff depending on the textbook and stuff like that. But if that's enabled correctly and you get everybody on board, then it can be super personalized. It can map to those certifications. It can help update your content more frequently or every term, which sounds like we do that all the time, but some institutions may not be able to do that all the time, just at the speed in which they're teaching.
Hmm.
Um, I think on the downside, like if you're not doing if you're an educational institution not doing anything, I can almost guarantee you your students are using the LLMs anyways. So by not baking them in, I think you're losing that element of personalization and you're actually increasing risk to your institution because you don't if it's in the platform, you're more likely to use it in the platform. So, and by it, I
Hmm.
mean the AI. If it's external, you have no idea. And also, go look up one of your classes in an external LLM. I will almost guarantee you that you will find exact assignments, exact,
Hmm.
and the learning objectives and all the other things that go into your course based upon what the LLM already knows. So I guess my argument is if it's external or internal, what's the difference? And then why wouldn't we make it internal?
Right. Right. Um, so with this movement towards kind of a personalized education future, and I don't want to focus on like doom and gloom stuff all the time, but these are the things that people ask, right? So, are there any negative drawbacks or kind of dangers to over personalization through the use of AI? Like, I'm thinking, for instance, again, to bring up the internet example, like filter bubbles, right? Everybody goes into their own kind of little echo chamber based on whatever Google is feeding you. Is there some kind of danger with this new future where AI is creating these personalized learning objectives and educational, I guess, frameworks?
If you only eat a certain type of food, that might be a danger to you too, right? So, yes, I mean, is that sort of danger, but if the AI is only trained on the course content, and then you have to prompt it to maybe chunk the content differently or have it understand your learning style, or maybe there's other data features that the universities are collecting too.
Okay, so if we're talking about the next couple of years, right? We're in kind of this middle point. We're not in the past, we're not in the future, but we're I guess in the present. And um, there's this concern, and again, I don't want this to be a podcast focused on just the negative things, but lots of people talk about this. There's this concern of um, or excitement and concern about the hyper personalization of education, and I guess frameworks in education later on. Um, Maybe you can expand on what these concerns actually are, and like what if there's anything behind that, if it's true or not.
I think that's a great question, Mark. If we think about AI, any technology innovation, we're probably gonna mess it up, and there's been many cases where we have messed it up, or some event happened and then we changed. We still use that technology today, but we changed how we use it. So, yes, over personalized AI is very true. It's a major risk, but one of the only ways to get around it, at least in education, is by understanding your students, understanding that ecosystem, the AI ecosystem, and think about the beauty of personalized education in the future. There's some good conversational chatbots out there right now that could do a pretty good job of 24/7 tutoring. But now picture it translating languages to your more native language so you don't have to hire a tutor for that anymore. And it also, from the university perspective, now you can run content in areas maybe you weren't attracting students, which then helps your university survive.
Mm,
Also, let's think about how colleges right now operate. It's all time based. So, a bachelor's is usually 4 years, maybe a master's is a little bit longer than that, a doctorate. It's all time. That's kind of my point there. Um,
mm.
AI can kinda level that playing field. It's disseminating, it's recommending those knowledge points so students can move through more quickly. If you do have a disability or some blockers in your learning, um, it kinda can bring you in and make it more equitable versus leaving you behind. But yes, to answer your question, I think over personalization is a risk, but I think we're gonna have to get through that for major payoffs down the road.
Right, right. Yeah, and it sounds like the benefits are gonna outweigh the potential concerns. Could we, as the term is now, double click on the learning with disabilities or blockers, as you were saying? Um, to me, this has always been something that AI could, I don't know if it solve is the right word, but certainly benefit people that are struggling in the current education system. I think it's a pretty clear understanding. Okay, you have a personalized learning schedule. It's learn at your own speed. It's learn the things that you're interested in that are relevant for like you specifically. How else could AI transform education for people and students of all ages with disabilities?
I don't think we're quite there yet, so this is kinda me being futuristic, a little bit more futuristic than now. Maybe we're out of the between times, but eventually, your AI agent or your AI assistant, whatever we come up with for a term for that, those recommendations will be synced to you. So think about like waveform research, wearables, Maybe the AI will already know that you need things chunked for 5-minute intervals. Maybe it will know that you need a video to watch instead of very complicated text that, maybe you're not going to make it through. Um, Not only does that enable AI, but it also enables individuals, and it's a very personalized touch. Um, I mean, again, data is the oil that goes through the engine. Right now, I think we're thinking about the data that's in university LMSs. It's in
Mm,
university grades, for example, transcripts, but there's a bunch of individual data that I have that could fully customize my learning experience to make me more engaged to actually want to persist and be successful. Back to translation, if my prominent language is Spanish, but I still know English, it can just translate everything over to Spanish, and I don't have to do that conversion in my head. Um, I don't know.
mm.
To me, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Are there any like early reports that are showing like, if we have this personalized future AI education system, uh, like how many people with disabilities kind of struggle through school every year or through the education system every year? And like what kind of, I don't know, is there like a rough estimate as like, the increase in GDP or the decrease in I don't know, criminality or something like for instance, this is a personal question. Like my brother has dyslexia. He had a hell of a time going through the education system, 15, 20 years ago or so. And he was shall we say less respectable he wasn't respecting the law because of all that, right? So there were some negative consequences in his life. He's doing great now, but I just see that if there were, the proper systems in place to help him out, then there would have been this reduced negative time period for him, which I'm sure and I know that it's the same. Similar situations happen with many other people across the world.
So thinking about the current ecosystem in education, we're really focused on those that succeed and complete. So
Mm,
persistence and success. That doesn't really measure everyone that you just described. We're really just focused on the outcome metrics. I think AI will actually help increase that playing field by focusing on that skills-based learning mechanism that I described. Um, with AI and people being able to learn things more quickly, in current time, and we're still kind of new into this, I think skills around the shelf life is around 5 years, 5 years ish, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. But in the future, it's probably going to be around 2 to 3 years ish, which might put people into panic that they're always going to have to go learn and upskill.
mm,
But with AI, you can do that more quickly. It's going to be a reduced cost. Um, Thinking about how universities operate now, you don't have to go and sit for that 4-year degree. You could come and go into the ecosystem as you please.
mhm,
And by doing that, people can go explore things that they're interested in. So there's a lot of jobs right now that are overlooked. Teaching, for example, we've had some great teachers in our lives. I'm sure that a good teacher's or a coach have made a great impact on individuals. But with the 24/7 AI agents, your tutor that gets to know you through personalized data to make sure, someone doesn't go off in a wrong path can kind of steer you back to base.
mhm,
And learning doesn't have to be the way we think of it now. What if there's like an ethical dilemma that you're facing? Like, should this is very small, but should I steal this candy bar? Right.
sure, sure.
But then that builds into other things. If AI is like, you really want to think about this so and so. I mean, uh, ha- let's do a mindfulness session. Let's think about some consequences. It's kind of always having, the devil's advocate with you. And I know that sounds kind of overarching, or that AI is always gonna be watching you. But if you have these setbacks or disabilities, I think that personalization really can amplify not only anyone's skills, but it can essentially magnitude wherever your strong suits are will magnify them even more. And your weak points will be brought up to an area that's you're no longer lacking. Um, Doctors and nurses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody's, at least in my friends group, they're having a hard time finding caretakers, so they have to use some other alternative. Uh, AI is going to be able to change that. I mean, I'm not saying that AI is going to replace those roles, but if physicians or nurses don't have to take notes, right, or take them as frequently, then they can focus on more people. So I don't know
Mm.
the time for that, but AI helps reduce time, and I think it will help also reduce the time for people with disabilities to learn what they want to learn, and maybe that's art, maybe that's learning how to um, the human skills I think are equally as important as those technical skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe to focus on skills a little bit more here as well. Like this is obviously something that is very interesting to me. As the first 100 episodes of this podcast were all focused on technological unemployment and like trying to figure out like, okay, is AI and all these cool emerging technologies that we bring onto the podcast, are they going to be augmenting humans or are they going to be replacing humans, right? This is kind of the big question for the next, maybe 50 years or something like that. It seems to be a constant question throughout history, but I think with AI, we're kind of in this new era where the story might change finally. Um, nurses and doctors is one thing. For the educational system, I mean, I don't want to talk about what's going on in the States right now with like the Department of Education. I try to keep this as a politically neutral podcast as possible. Um, but when it comes to AI and the need for rapid skill development, as you said, maybe 2 to 3 years, your skills will be relevant, and then you need to upskill or reskill. Um, what role do you see human education um, professionals in that, or are we going to be seeing more and more, um, shall we say, unburdening to the AI educator, we can say?
This is just my opinion, so I
Yeah.
just want to sure that's
Mhm.
known. But I think, at least in current time, and I think as AI progresses, this opinion might shift. But humans like to be taught by humans. There's always that coaching mechanism. Um, as I was describing earlier, I can think of one to two teachers that really impacted my life, and without meeting those individuals, I would probably have a very different life today than when I met them. And I think the same is gonna be true in the future. Um, it's really that coaching mechanism, but I do think college enrollments can expand. You'll always have a 24/7 AI agent
Mm.
in a college course throughout your programs. Um, and they're going to recommend maybe stackable pathways based upon the recommendations that it's seeing in your learning data. Um, it's going to be more of a fluid ecosystem. Before I was describing how departmentalized and siloed each educational function is. If it's more of that AI as a system approach, we're probably not so much concerned about time anymore. And I know that sounds odd, but then it allows for the future of work to really take place, because then people can come and go to learn skills that map to jobs, and as the jobs change, the universities are ready for that. So it's kind of
Mm.
backwards as it is today, but I think it probably is a much needed change. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and following from that, so then how does the credentials work, right? Like, I have a couple degrees, not really relevant anymore for especially for the work that I do. Um, I've taken dozens of these online courses through Coursera and other things over the years. Have a little certificate and everything, and that's lovely. How do you see, following from what we just talked about, how do you see the whole like traditional credential system continuing, changing, evolving? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I mean, I think this is what's super interesting about this is that we're still defining what skills, like what the definition of a skill is, as we're defining what the definition of AI is and how that plays into our lives. It's not as solidified as a degree. I think when we say college degree, there's some concept in individuals' mind. When I say let's go learn a skill,
Mm.
there's some ambiguity there. But I think really it just comes down, and either this is through the organization that you're in, or it's your own individual self. But I think everybody needs to design a learning plan. It could be 1 year out, 2 years out. You can use AI to help you with the learning plan if you want. But this is kind of where I am today. This is where I kind of want to go, or these are some of the market anticipations that may occur. This is what I think I have for skills. What are some gaps and how can I go learn them? And then if you are using AI, AI is really good at finding offerings that can help fill those skills gaps. It can provide costs, it can provide summaries of whatever you want to do. And then over time, you'll get these stackable credentials that are skills based. Since you're in this ecosystem a little bit more, because it's not so much time based. You're always going back. There's some currency exchange there because you're seeing an ROI instantly. And then those stackables could then feed into programs, degrees, whatever the case may be. I think right now universities think that they sell programs and degrees. And yes, I think that's true, but they also have a whole bunch of courses that attach to those products, right? And the fundamental of a course is teaching skills that align to the job market. So kind of by flipping that switch and looking at skills, then you're able to acquire your product portfolio, the university's product portfolio, for that recommendation engine that I talked about earlier. When I go to an LLM, a search function of it, and I'm like, oh, I need to learn some leadership skills. I need to learn some more digital marketing skills. Um, it's not going to produce courses. It's going to show you where you can learn those skills and how quickly that
Mm.
changes. I also think there's a big shift in education, or at least maybe I'm optimistic here, but it's more competency based. So instead of A, B, C, D, F, it's exceeds expectation, meets expectation, not so much, doesn't meet.
Mm.
But it's a continuous, that's more self-driven, right? So if I want to earn the highest criteria, I can push myself to do that. If I just want to be proficient, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I mean, some skills are harder to acquire than others, but there's always that balance. And uh, evaluation on grades, I mean, yes, companies today do require transcripts, but are there I mean, I hate to break the news, but I'm not sure if they're like, "Oh, so and so didn't get an A in math. We can't." If it's that granular, I mean, it might be a problem, but I think they're like,
Mm.
"Oh, they have all the background to be a marketing individual." So we can put that into, we can assign them the job, but I think with skills-based learning comes skills-based hiring, and I know it's a little bit complex right now, but with AI, I think, yeah, on both sides of the company and on the student side, it's easier to align candidates with jobs.
Mm. Okay, interesting. Um, so I have another question here, and it might tie more into the hyper personalization aspect. So it might go back, but we can play this out. Um, when you have somebody that is um, oh no, no, I just totally forgot it. My video editor to here will cut this out. Um, shoot, what was the point? It had to do with personalizing the oh shoot. Yeah, it was a really interesting idea too. Hmm. Well, I'll skip it. Damn. I hate it when that happens. Okay, so maybe just another question or two here, Ben. Focusing like looking ahead, we can touch on like um what do you think? And this is kind of a weird question, but how do you think learning will feel in, say, 5 to 10 years' time? I think it's a very open-ended question for you, right? So, like, if I'm remembering back to my university time, like it had a certain feel to it. From what you are describing, it certainly would look and feel a different way. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I think it will feel more organic. It's pursuable. So in
Hmm.
current form, most training's done through a university. They give you credits for the time that you put in, and then you trade in those credits for what they're worth at the end. In the future, I think with skills-based hiring and skills-based learning, universities could kind of attach to companies. So think about like an HR training that you've
Mm.
done or a compliance training that you've done. You usually log into an LMS, you do the training, and you check a box. In the future, you'll probably have universities offerings through your company, and you can explore those skills, and that will then blend workforce individuals with academic individuals. So then that's another mentorship opportunity instead of you just being, I think people just have a switch. I'm a student now, or I'm in workforce now, so I'm not a student anymore.
Mm.
But it's always that continuous learning that I think is important, and especially in the revolution that we're going to be living through, I think continuous learning is where it's at. And if I wanted to learn marketing, for example, pairing myself with a human marketing expert while still learning from AI, still while having some sort of a human facilitator in the course.
Mhm.
I think that's a very unique experience compared to today where, it kind of replaces the internship. It's more of again, an ecosystem versus just
Mm.
silos of steps.
Right. Okay, interesting. So to me, it sounds like it's a lot more streamlined to help people find work and find the relevant space for them in certain organizations. So the question that I forgot to ask before is a little bit related to, I think, the story of Steve Jobs. Now, I don't know how how many people go through scenarios like that where you're just taking a bunch of random courses and you don't think that they're all at all relevant, but later on in your life, they actually help you to create something great. And um, do you think that there's a potential risk of, having this ecosystem type of education system where it's a little bit more connected to helping students go into a work environment? Do you think that it might reduce the, shall we say, Steve Jobs experience of going through university? And is that good? Is that bad? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
I think maybe it would amplify the those individuals in the world. I think right now, a lot of folks maybe, skill taking isn't, sorry, risk taking isn't necessarily a skill.
Mhm.
Um, But right now, I think it's like, okay, I'm gonna go do my time at university, then I'll go do my time at a job, and then that will lead to retirement. And in the future, I think, it's more organic, so you're gonna have to continually go back and forth. And I think Steve Jobs did have a learning plan in his head. He saw maybe some of this broken nature of the world and thought about how he could fix it. And I think that e eventually everybody's gonna have to think about how they're gonna play into the world. It's not gonna be as, "Oh, I wanna go be X, Y, or Z. I'm gonna acquire these skills." The jobs might be changing, so you're gonna have to adapt and overcome. One of the largest skills to focus on right now is adaptability and
Yep.
flexibility and resilience, and those are very human things, and I think Steve Jobs also had a lot of those characteristics.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I see that our time is winding down here. Maybe kind of a final question for you. Now, clearly, you're very hopeful and excited about the future of learning, especially as it relates to AI. Is there one thing that you're more excited than anything else from all the things that we've talked about today, or something that was missed that you think like, wow, this is like really cool when it comes to 5 years, 10 years from now that either you have said or that you think should be brought into the conversation?
I just want to remind everyone that we're still in the between times. We really haven't figured this AI thing out yet. It's really important to design your learning plan. I know that might sound silly to folks that are very established in their career, but if you have a plan and then you're working that plan, whatever curveballs are thrown in this between times, you'll be able to adapt. And I think thinking about a world where change is okay. Um, it's gonna be a little bit uncomfortable. We're gonna get some stuff wrong. But at the end of all that, I think I mean, it's really hard to describe what I think because it's so surreal. Um,
Mm.
but it could be very beautiful, and we could focus on those human factors and teaching, being a clinician, um, building houses, a lot of things that society's lacking right now, will be amplified. So, sure, it might be scary, but at the end, I think AI will amplify us, not distract from us.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect way to end the podcast here. Thanks so much for your time, Ben. I'll have your website and LinkedIn up on the show notes. Are there any other places that you want people to follow what you're doing or reach out?
LinkedIn and my website's fine, bentaskerai.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for your time. Interesting to hear a kind of a different side of things when it comes to the future of education. Looking forward to see how how that plays out, and maybe have you back on the podcast at some far off future where these AI personalized educators are there. Thanks again for your time, Ben.
No problem. Thanks, Mark.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.